Welcome back to the show where we run you through all the Dolphins news you need to know about. After running through the news you need to know about, we run you through the fan Q&A where we answer Dolphins fans' questions. I'm sure we're going to have to answer a lot of questions today. I want to get through some of the smaller news stories before we get to the big topic of the day, which is obviously Deshaun Watson and Tua and the whole situation that's going on with that, which is kind of weird. And it seems like, I don't think I talked about this last week. It seems like it feels like it's been going on. I mean, it has been for a while, but I'm talking about recently, like when it started to kind of pop off again. It just feels like it's been going on forever. But anyway, let's get into some of the smaller stuff. This news story kind of sucks. It's bad and good at the same time. Dolphins placed Jason McCourty and Malcolm Brown on IR. Head coach Brian Flores, again, this comes from Pro Football Rumors. Brian Flores told reporters that defensive back Jason McCourty and running back Malcolm Brown are heading to injured reserve. McCourty suffered a foot injury, which could require surgery, meaning that he could be out longer than 3 weeks. Brown just suffered a quad injury that forced him to exit the game. But they're both on IR, so they're both going to miss 3 games. Here's the thing about this particular news. Nobody cares about Malcolm Brown. And I shouldn't say that. Obviously, I hope he gets healthy and he's well. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about... Let me put it this way. Let me phrase it this way. It has no effect on the games. It actually has a positive effect on the games. He's not that good of a player. Ahmed and Gaskin always should have gotten the bulk of the carries this year. It really felt like more of a fantasy that Brian Flores had, that we would have some kind of power run game, but they picked the wrong back to do that with, and it is what it is. He's just not a very good running back at all. He's undersized to be a power back. He doesn't run with power. He doesn't have great vision. He's inconsistent when it comes to vision. He had that touchdown against the Raiders. That was a nice move, It was really well blocked. And that was pretty much it for Malcolm Brown. And he doesn't really fit the scheme that the offense is trying to kind of push towards. And I'm sorry if you guys hear stuff in the background. I can't do anything about that. But he doesn't fit the no-huddle, 70%, which is our rate at passing the ball right now. We can't run the ball, guys. And that's pretty clear. And I'm sorry that you guys hear these loud people in the background, but it's kind of distracting to me more than anything. But anyway, the point is we're passing it 70%, 70% of the time. Malcolm Brown doesn't fit that. It should have always been Ahmed. It should have always been Gaskin. And one thing that I have noticed watching these games, I really just wish the Dolphins had more size at running back. I mean, both Ahmed, Gaskin, and Brown are not big people. And again, like I said, before the season even started, not only is Malcolm, he's just not very good at anything, and Gaskin and Ahmed are pretty much the same player. So they're a little bit too samey in the backfield. And, the whole thing was, we want variety in the backfield. We want to be able to rotate. Well, you should, okay, that's a good thing to do. And, they brought up the New England comparison. Well, New England had Garrett Blount and James White and Rex Burkhead. Okay? Those are 3 completely different players. Ahmed, Gaskin are the same person, basically, and Malcolm Brown doesn't give you any kind of variety. So it never was the same thing as that. They should have went out and pursued someone who would have added a different element to the backfield. Obviously, they didn't do that. Watching Jonathan Taylor play on Sundays I'm sure makes Dolphins fans a little bit upset because he's such a good player. He's so talented, and it would have been nice to see him as a Fin. And in terms of Devin McCourty being out, Jason McCourty, and he might miss the rest of the year. I think it's actually, again, I like Jason. I think he's a good player. He made a few nice plays against Atlanta. And he's actually one of the more consistent players on the team. But I actually kind of want these young guys to play more, like Holland and Brandon. With Eric, I think all 3 of those guys have a pretty bright future. Well, Eric Rowe, we already know his future. We know what he is as a player. But Brandon and Holland, I think, have bright futures. So it's nice to get them as much playing time as possible. We're 1-6. We're on a 6-game. It feels awful to even say this right now, but we're on a 6-game lose streak. We've lost to bad teams that we have no business losing to, back-to-back weeks, which sucks. And there are very few bright spots, and getting these young players time is a good thing. So it sucks to see Jason go, but at least the young players will we'll get it going a little bit here. This next news story comes from Pro Football Rumors. Dolphins add Duke Johnson to the practice squad. The Dolphins are signing running back Duke Johnson to the practice squad. Johnson has yet to play in 2021 and marks his first deal since the start of the season. Here's the thing about Duke Johnson. He, obviously I don't expect anything from him. I don't think he'll play over Laird or any of like that. I think this is more of an insurance, maybe to run, kick the tires, see what he's got left. But again, when we talk about sameness, I mean, all of the Dolphins running back, even Patrick Laird, they're all the same type of running back. Kind of undersized, more of a spread, scat back. All three of them are. Gaskin, Laird, and Duke Johnson. So there's not a lot of variety there. I don't really know what Duke Johnson adds, so I don't think Dolphins fans should be excited about this at all. I don't even expect him to play it down this year. So I know he's kind of a big name, and obviously Miami fans know who he is. But this isn't going to do anything for this team. Let me see. What are we going next? I feel like I'm missing something. I don't think I'm missing anything. I guess we should get to the big news story of the day, which has been reported from the Houston Chronicle and many other... actually, you know what? We're going to start here. This was reported by Omar Kelly of the Sun Sentinel. I didn't get to read the full report. I forgot about this news story before we get into Deshaun Watson. It had something to do with... there was really two stories that came from here that were interesting. One of them had to do with Tua and how an anonymous player... and again, these both come from the Sun Sentinel. I don't have the subscription, so I don't have the full article. I did read some other people have, they tweet, parts of the article. And I'm familiar with the story, but apparently there was an anonymous player that said Tua is the same leader that Fitzpatrick is. And again, this is what I hate about anonymous play. I love how when you're anonymous like this, you can say whatever you want, and it does matter who it's coming from. So I don't even like the reporters reporting this. It's even if it was one person who said that, there's so many people in a locker room, and it just kind of feels stupid in a lot of different ways. I just wish, stories like this don't do anything for anybody, and the person who said it should have it shouldn't be anonymous. It really, really shouldn't. So if I were you guys, I don't think I would put too much stock into it. The other report was Brian Flores is just apparently losing the locker room, and they cited some things about how it's too New Englandy, he's not very approachable, and some of these other things that were said in this article. I don't know. I don't know whether to believe that one too much either, and my evidence for that is just how the players react after, they still say that, the coaches do a good job. That none of that was being said when Philbin was the coach or Adam Gase was the coach. Everybody in the locker room was pretty much ready to abandon ship. And it's different here. So I think, just like Mike Gesicki, even Emmanuel Ogbah, it's not even just offensive players or defensive players. It's on both sides of the ball. It seems that the coaching staff still has their respect. So I wouldn't put too much stock into that either. It really kind of, again, comes down to what you guys believe. And, it's a rough season. I'm sure there is going to be a lot of tension in the locker room, coming from a few different places, but I don't think Brian's losing the locker room by any stretch of the imagination. Let's get into this next big story of the day, which is the Deshaun Watson circus, which is just unbelievable, honestly, in a lot of different ways. I think we should start with the Deshaun Watson and how it's been reported. In my opinion, I don't think he's going to be traded anywhere. I think a lot of these news stories contradict themselves in a lot of different ways. And there is a big difference between the Houston reporting and the Miami reporting, clearly. The refusal to put this stuff to bed is a little weird from Stephen Ross and Brian Flores and the whole regime. But Chris Sims said something, and this is the only smart thing that NBC has said throughout the Deshaun Watson saga, is that he thinks that Brian Flores doesn't really have a lot of control over that. I agree with that. I think he really is just coaching the team. And I've also had this weird theory that if Tua was traded, I wonder how Brian would react to that. I don't think he would necessarily react to that in a positive way. So it's going to be interesting to see how if the Deshaun Watson thing does happen, how Brian is handled after the Bills game. Because if it is going to happen, it will happen after the Bills game. I don't think it will. I don't think you're going to see Deshaun Watson in a Dolphins uniform ever. And dude, can we talk about how loud people are annoying? Can we talk about... We got to talk about that after the show. But anyway, the point is that... what was I? I just lost my train of thought. Yeah, I don't think Deshaun Watson is going to play for the Dolphins. I really don't. I think this is a lot of nonsense for the most part. I don't think that anything's really going to come of it at the end of the day. And we got to stop the show. Sorry about this, guys. There's a lot of people here right now. And I'm trying to, do the show, and I haven't been able to these last few days, and it's just so much noise. But anyway, back to what we were talking about. The Deshaun Watson situation, and one of the things that really makes me upset is a lot of this reporting is act like it's fact, and especially from NBC, and they literally have no accountability for what they say. They do their show every week and criticize people, calling them stupid and how dumb their decisions were, how dumb their roster decisions were, and they literally just spout sewage every day and have no accountability for their sources or if they're telling the truth or any of that stuff. And, I think that's obviously becoming more commonplace nowadays, but it's just annoying. I wish there was, critics for the critics, but, that's never going to happen. But the point is I really don't believe any of this stuff. I'm being dead serious. I am honestly going to be not... I think a lot of people aren't going to be surprised when the deadline passes. I mean, we heard from Tua and Brian this week. If you didn't watch their press conferences, Tua saying that he's confident that he's going to be the Dolphins quarterback past the deadline. Brian Flores said, how Tua is the quarterback. I tend to believe them. Nobody in the beat writing realm for the Dolphins has reported on any trade deal going down or anything like that. It's only been the Houston Chronicle. The Barry Jackson tweet, he was quoting what McClain said, who's the Houston beat writer, about the trade compensation and there being a deal being done. He did not report that. He did not get that from his sources. He got that from Houston, a Houston reporter, which anybody can go read that article. It's not even a source. It's just he's literally quoting a separate article. So it never has been reported from any beat writer in the Dolphins organization, close to the Dolphins organization, that this has been consummated or there's been any agreements or any of that. So that should tell you guys alone that something's not right there. Ian Rappaport did report that Deshaun Watson has only waived his no trade clause for the Miami Dolphins. That's pretty much all of the only concrete thing that has come part from Houston. Everything else has been from Houston's side of things. Other than the Ian Rappaport report, that's it. It's all been from Houston. So that's a little weird. Not to mention the fact, why in the world, other than these reporters like Mike Florio and all these other guys who sit here and, say this stuff, why would you wait for the trade deadline other than... people have said, this goes through the deadline. Why? What is going to change from now to Tuesday? Nothing. Nothing is going to change. I think we all know that. So it's honestly I don't know if they're just trying to save face or what the heck the deal is. But it doesn't make a lot of sense. It just, none of it makes a lot of sense. I don't think Deshaun Watson will be a Dolphin. This reporting is out of control. I guess people are doing it for attention. I'm not really sure why. I don't know where McClain, the Houston beat writer, who's been around football for a long time, if you're familiar with A Football Life and America's Game and NFL Top 10, he's been in a lot of those NFL Network shows, those NFL film shows. He's been around football. He's a historian of the game. He seems like he would be a trustworthy source, but clearly that's I don't know. I don't know. Clearly whatever. Maybe it was to drudge up some type of deal for Houston. I'm not really sure what that report was about, but clearly nothing. To be honest with you, nothing's going to come of it. And again, this is following the news story from McLean in the Houston Chronicle that the Dolphins have, again, this comes from Pro Football Rumors, the Dolphins have agreed on compensation, but the legal issues still are a hurdle for the team, for the Dolphins and Stephen Ross. Who knows if any of that is true? Stephen Ross did decline to say anything about this at the owners' meeting that was this past week. Him and David Tepper were seen having a weird conversation, and it was rumored that Tepper was also interested in Deshaun Watson. So there's a lot of interesting things here. It was reported by Ian Rappaport that, and even Roger Goodell said in his press conference, that Deshaun Watson does not meet the requirements to be on the commissioner's exempt list, which means that if he was traded, he would not be suspended, at least this year. So there's a lot of factors going into this. And to be honest with you, I think it's a bunch of nonsense. I don't know how in the world that this man would even be able to be in a press conference right now, let alone an NFL game, let alone the fact that, just, I don't know, it just doesn't seem right to me. Basically, my point is, I say all this to say, I think it's a bunch of charlatan bull crap. I don't think it's real. Maybe there was some truth to it maybe something almost got done. I could see that, but people still maintain that he will be a Dolphin. If he was gonna be a Dolphin, it would have already happened. It would have happened already. I just don't think a trade will be final. I don't know why you would wait this long to finalize the trade. And there's a lot of weird, things that you can kind of think about when it comes to this whole Deshaun Watson fiasco. Is the handling of Tua has been terrible. I do agree with people on that. The whole situation is a fire. I mean, this whole season is a fire. And if Deshaun Watson does somehow and for some reason they wait and let's say they're still talking about this deal, whatever that means, and for some reason they wait till the day of to do this for whatever reason. I wonder if how much of this was because people forget this happened at the start of the year, right before the season even started, before the preseason ended. This Deshaun Watson stuff was put to bed, obviously, with Brian Flores saying the same thing that he's saying now, but it was heavily rumored then. And it's just weird, this cloud has been kind of hanging over this team's head for a while, not to mention the fact that, we have some stuff in the locker room to do with Tua, and stuff like that. You wonder how much of that has had an effect on the season, and if it does happen, it definitely did have an effect on the season, because, and how much, I don't know, the trust for Brian Flores and all that stuff is going to come into question, I think, if this does happen. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see, I guess, through the Tuesday. Let me know what you guys think. I don't think it's going to happen. There's not really much else to say about this situation. I just don't think it's really that realistic. And moving on from that, let's get into Tua. And that really kind of leads us into the Falcons game. Obviously, if you guys don't know, the Dolphins followed the Falcons 28-30, I think. I can't even remember the final score. I'm just all over the place right now. Let me look into this really quick. I think that was the final score. So, hold on. Sorry, guys. Yeah, 30 to 28, excuse me. But and again, this is related to the Deshaun Watson situation. If you look at Tua's, last 3 to 4 games, he's played against the Falcons, Jaguars, and Patriots. He's played 3 games this year. He has 7 touchdowns in those games. Obviously, the Bills game, he didn't even play in the Bills game. But he has 7 touchdowns in 3 games. Okay, he threw 4 touchdowns against the Falcons, had an 80% completion percentage. He has no run game. His receivers lead the NFL in drops, not to mention the fact that most of them have been hurt this year, between Preston Williams, Devontae Parker, and Will Fuller. Albert Wilson has been an absolute zero. The play calling just got good, and I love how everybody was on the Charlie Fry train, even Omar Kelly, and ever since he stopped beaming in the plays, whatever that means, to the headset, the offense has gotten better. So I don't know what that has to do with anything. And granted, Tua, conveniently has come back in that time. So I think a lot of that had to do with Tua as well. But clearly he's not the problem. The weird thing about this whole situation is if you look at this team, one of the bright spots of the season has been him. He's been one of the best players for them all year. He is top 5. I believe he's 6. No, I think he's 4 on the completion percentage rankings of the NFL right now. So he's top 10 in completion percentage in the league. I think he's top 5 or he's 6. Someone's gonna have to fact check me on that. But he has one of the highest completion percentages in the league right now. Again, I will repeat this. He had 7 touchdowns in 3 games. Now, people want to point out the interceptions, what I'll get to here in a second. I just want to focus on this. He has posted an 80-plus Pro Football Focus grade in back-to-back games, which hasn't happened since Ryan Tannehill in 2015, okay? He's playing really, really good football, and like I said, he has zero help around him. Tannehill did that with a little bit of help. He was never passing at this volume. He never had this many attempts, and that was one of the bigger reasons that nobody really liked Tannehill in Miami, was because when he did have to shoulder that load, and still to this day in Tennessee, he doesn't have to shoulder a load, he wasn't very good when he got up into the 40s and 50s, or the 30s, the high 30s to 40s in attempts. He always had a really bad game. Not the case with Tua Tagovailoa. He is still doing this with a massive workload. Not to mention the fact that his receivers are hurt. His offensive line has been better, but inconsistent. He didn't even have a center in this game, which people don't even think about. But we're down to a third string center. I mean, we went through centers like Oreo cookies this year. No running game. And again, we're passing 70% of the time, and people want to complain about the turnovers. That's a massive, massive amount of pressure for a quarterback to be under, and he's still performing well. And honestly, I think the worst interception he's had this year, I know people might point out the the Jacksonville interception. I think the ball just kind of got away from him on that. I don't know why it did, but the worst one was definitely in this game, and it's not the Okun interception that was almost a pick six. It was the one in the first half in the red zone. Where he turns it over, and I think Atlanta ends up getting 3 on the other end in that on after that turnover. But we were in the red zone. I can't remember what the down was right now. That was a really. I don't understand why nobody's bringing. To me, that was the worst interception he's thrown all year. I'm not really sure what he saw on that. I know that he said him and Durham had a miscommunication. I can kind of believe that if he was supposed to cut in or out and he didn't. And Tua just kind of throws to an area and there's only a defensive player there. That's not what happened. The guy was double teamed. I don't even know why they did this to Durham Smythe. Durham Smythe isn't. I don't know if they got him and Mike Gesicki mixed up. Durham Smythe is not exactly a red zone threat, okay? But he was basically triple teamed on this play. And Tua throws a very bad interception. He actually had someone wide open underneath. And I'm not really sure what the heck happened on that play. To me, that was just a really bad offensive play by Tua, in my opinion. But other than that, I mean, you think about the other pick in this game to the linebacker. It to me, that was just obviously he kind of went to it late. He didn't really see him early, but he was just trying to do too much. He didn't want to get sacked. Momentum just changed. He was just trying to make a play, and obviously he was trying to do too much. Ended up being an interception. But I love the way. I thought it was a great performance, to be honest with you. And I know a lot of people in the comment section are going to be for some reason, I don't know why you would blame him. I don't know how in the world you could blame him for this game. He fought back. He got the Dolphins the lead with barely any time left to go in the game. I think there was like 4 minutes. No, it was under 4 minutes left in the game. We had the lead. The defense just couldn't close it out. Now, granted, you could argue with the red zone interception and the interception after the Xavier Howard interception, maybe we could have closed the game out earlier. But there were too many third downs in this game where the Dolphins should have gotten off the field. The defense just did not play very good in this game. This was probably their worst performance of the year. They just squandered a lot of opportunities, unfortunately. They had some stupid penalties in this game. And it was just bad, to be honest with you, just odd. I wasn't a huge fan of, the last drive of the game, some of the defensive play calling. I thought we were kind of, especially on that first play, I don't understand the zone call. The last 2 plays, though, to really win them the game were in man coverage. And again, we had a beautiful double team called on Kyle Pitts. Holland was late on that rotation over there. And, Matt Ryan kind of basically had a one-on-one with Xavier Howard. And you know what? It was their best player on our best player. And we just lost, unfortunately. But my point is, I say all this to say that probably the brightest spot of the year so far has been him. And one of the more consistent players as well has been him. And it's weird that for some reason it's all being blamed on him from a lot of different outlets. If you know, Chris Sims, who I respect, I think he's a very smart person. It doesn't really seem like there's, I don't know, it just seems maybe a lot of it is uneducated in a lot of different areas. Because if this was any other quarterback who's had to pass over 70% of the snaps with no run game and his receivers were hurt and he has a below average offensive line to boot, you know, they would be kind of excused for some of their team's failures. It wouldn't fall on his shoulders, but for some reason it's Tua's fault. I don't really understand that. You know, I don't think it's definitely not Tua's fault. He's been one of the, again, 7 touchdowns in 3 games is very impressive. We haven't had that kind of production out of a quarterback in a long time. Not to mention everything's on fire around him. You know, with the off-the-field issues, with some of the personnel in-house, it's kind of a head-scratcher. Because he is carrying this team. If people want to accept that or not, the only reason we have 28 points is because of Tua. If you look at even the rushing numbers, 16 carries for 67 yards for Myles Gaskin in this game. Tua was the second leading rusher in this game. Literally, the only reason we had the lead in the fourth quarter was because of him. And he made a lot of nice reads and nice throws in this game. And Mike Gesicki did come up big. He had 7 receptions for 85 yards. And Jalen Waddle continues to flash. He also had 7 receptions for 83 yards. So, at the end of the day, the dude, and again, if you like Pro Football Focus grades, and he is one of the highest graded Dolphins as well. I think he's second to only Emmanuel Ogbah. So, there you go. I mean, I really don't know the issues. It's a weird situation. And very weird. And I don't know. And again, I think that's another reason why I don't think Deshaun Watson will become a Dolphin. I think there is still a lot of belief in the building, and watch me eat my words after this week, but I don't know, I can only go with my gut on this one and common sense, to be honest with you, and it just kind of leads me to believe that this isn't going to happen, and whether Dolphins fans like it or not, I don't know like the percentage of people that at this point would trade for Deshaun Watson. I think the Dolphins are in very good hands with Tua. I'm very excited to see the rest of his season. I think he's getting better each and every single week. And I'm very excited to see where he goes in his career because I think he's got a very bright future. You know, people like Omar Kelly said, you know, we haven't seen efficiency like this since Dan Marino and stuff like that. And it's true. Like, Tua is definitely one of the best quarterbacks that we've had here in a long time. And again, I just want to repeat this. The dude has 7 touchdowns in 3 games that he's played in. Okay? So people need to calm down. There's a lot of issues on this team right now, especially defensively. We scored 28 in this game. We really had a lot of crucial third downs in this game that last year's team, I do believe would get off the field. I don't really know the issues with this team are really weird. You know, and it's a lot of mental mistakes on defense. Like, some of the double teams were messed up. The game plan was good. I actually liked the game plan. I thought putting Byron and mixing X on Pitts and even double teaming Pitts as a halftime adjustment to really, you know, get Eric Rowe off of him. They did a lot of good things in this game. It just wasn't. We just couldn't make enough plays at the end of the day to close it out there. And the defensive line was a little bit. I wish we were a little bit more aggressive at the end of the game, I would say. Maybe a little bit more blitz packages. But our defensive line has to play better on a more... Because we have a good rotation. That's the thing that people don't really get, is it's not like these 4 have to play every snap. We have a lot of people we can rotate in and out of the lineup from the defensive line. And it just... I don't know. It just hasn't come together yet as a defense. And obviously we had another busted coverage in this game. And again, another game where Xavier Howard is just really bad at zone coverage. Every time we've played it, it just hasn't really worked out. And yeah, it's unfortunate. Not to mention the fact that I forgot that Jerome Baker obviously injured his knee. I forgot that in the news segment of this video. Who knows when he'll be back. But yeah, it is what it is. You know, I don't know why Xavier Howard's so bad at zone, but this goes back to early in his career. I mean, we've had a lot of busted coverages over on X's side when it comes to zone coverages. So, yeah, that needs to be cleaned up. I know that Holland did kind of sink in and kind of been on it a little bit, but there are other plays in this game and in his career where I'm like, I don't know what the heck we're doing. But it is what it is. Maybe we need to run more zone coverage in practice because even the play to start the game-winning drive for the Falcons, where they hit Kyle Pitts down the seam, I could literally show you 4 different plays where teams have ran that similar play with the tight end when we went to zone coverage and hit the same seam route every single time. I really don't get it. They're just not very good at zone coverage. I don't know what else to really say on that one. But yeah, the defense is in shambles right now, and it's really weird. I was holding out hope for the because they had a pretty good game against Jacksonville, but they're too inconsistent. I feel like we need more pressure from the defensive line, and especially in this game. So even in games like the Raiders game, there are a lot of third downs this year that were huge, where we really couldn't we should be wreaking more havoc defensively up front. So yeah, moving on from that, I think we're gonna get into the fan Q&A here. But when you look at and before we get to the fan Q&A, I want to mention this. When you look at who have been the best players of the Dolphins season so far, like if you sit down and think about it, there's not a lot defensively that I would pick out from. I don't even think Xavier Howard's had that good of a season this year, and I'm being dead serious. I don't think he's had that great of a year. I think Byron's actually had a better year than him. If I had to sit down and think about the best Dolphins so far this season, who would I put on? I think honestly it would be. I think Tua's in there. I think Tua would be in my top 3, and this is in no particular order. I would have probably Tua. Mike Gesicki's definitely in the top 5. I would have Waddle in there. He's definitely been consistent. And defensively, the only guys that I can really think of that come to mind is Byron and Emmanuel Ogbah. I think they've had good years so far this year. Everyone else has kind of been inconsistent up and down. Xavier Howard has. He had that nice interception, which was luck. And I know that people are going to be like, oh, it was to play. It was lucky, guys. Calvin really should have caught that ball. And he's been terrible in zone coverage this year. Jerome Baker has been very bad, and I love Jerome Baker. You guys know that. Defensively, there's not a lot to like. Zach Sealer has been really good. I like Zach Sealer. Christian Wilkins has been good. Other than that, Elandon Roberts has been up and down. Defensively, there's not a lot to be happy about this year, which is very weird. And I like most of the game plans this year. I thought the Raiders' game plan was great. The Falcons' game plan was good. I like the adjustments that we made in the second half. And we're just not getting a lot of splash plays in big moments. Now, in this game, we did have a few. We had the crazy interception by Xavier Howard, and then obviously the strip sack. I think Ogba was the one who got Matt Ryan. But there were other third downs in this game where it was just like, if we are that talented of a defense, 3rd and 8 backed up on their own 10-yard line, we got to get off the field there. The crowd was into it. There was just so many big third downs this year that we just couldn't come up with. 3rd and goals, the one against the Colts, the touchdown by Ellie Cox. There were so many third downs in that game. And again, we're one of the worst third down defenses in the NFL, and that's unacceptable. It's not just unacceptable. It's ridiculous for a defense like this to have that kind of percentage right now. And honestly, I think we're 7 games into the year. I was trying to be patient with this defense, but it comes up every single game where it's like, good defenses get off the field there. So, yeah, that's basically, again, in my closing thoughts about this year so far, if you think about who the best players have been on the team, Tua is one of them. Like I said, Tua, Ogbah, Gesicki, Waddle, Byron, I think, has had a good year. Holland has had a decent year for a rookie. He's had some mental issues in terms of, obviously the blown coverage against the Falcons. He's had some other things where it's like, okay, you're young, we can forgive that. But Eric Rowe has been, obviously teams have saw on tape that he is not good at the 50-50 ball. and he's never been good at that. And that's shown up in games. So there's not a lot to be positive about. And one of the things in the brighter spots has been the quarterback position. And it's just, I don't know. It's weird that there's just been so much to hate, especially this year when he's played good football. And he's been one of the best players on the team. So let's get into the fan Q&A, where we answer fans' questions. And if you went to a team like New Orleans, this is the last thing I want to say. Let's say Tua does leave. He goes to a team like the Carolina Panthers or the New Orleans Saints or the Washington football team. If he goes to one of these teams, I promise you, and I said this with Tannehill too, he's gonna have a good career. He's gonna have a great career, and it is what it is. And I guess it just. It's unfortunate the way we've handled him and the way that the press and just everything about the whole Tua situation has been handled so far, since it's been negative, and it's not because of his play on the field, it's off the field, which is so weird. Because this year his play has been good. It's been very good. And it's unfortunate that he still... you would think this man has thrown 15 picks this year. Or, he's had the Jameis Winston, just a bad year, and he hasn't had a bad year. He's had a good year. This first question comes from TR3MC. He says, does Miami need another defensive coordinator, or do we need to get more aggressive at the beginning of our games instead of just at the end when we're playing from behind? This is a great question. I mean, I agree with that. I think, we saw, and again, someone tweeted this on our team stream, that we've played less man this year than zone. Now, again, the year isn't over. I think the difference between this year's defense and last year's defense, the biggest difference is the less of aggressiveness, the blitzing. When we have blitzed this year, it's been either safeties or corners blitzing. We haven't used the Amoeba front nearly enough this year, and that was one of the bigger reasons we won 10 games last year, and it really confused offensive linemen that we played. And anytime we've played teams with, and again, I understand what Brian doesn't want to get too aggressive against better teams offensively, but what do we have to lose? And we've seen that against bad teams less this year. Like against Jacksonville, we should have most definitely used that front more than we did. I don't know why we didn't use it more. It's against a rookie quarterback. You want to talk about confusing someone, you should do it against a rookie quarterback. So I think the biggest difference between this defense and last year's defense is the less aggressiveness and not using the Amoeba front enough, because we've barely seen it this year. And I think you can probably count on both your hands how many times we've actually lined up in it. And I would love to know why that is. We've blitzed from other fronts, but it hasn't been that one. And against the Raiders, I understand why we didn't do it against them. They've shown on film, especially against teams like Baltimore, that they've been able to block pressures very well and give Derek Carr time to throw a deep pass. But we haven't used it enough this year, and I don't know why. And I don't know if that's just, like I said, more faith in the front seven, whatever the case may be, but I really wish we would run that more. This next question comes from Beef. He says, oh, God. All right, here we go. He says, hey, Skaggs, this will be a rant and a question. Even though the season is pretty much over for the Dolphins, doesn't mean that they should let other teams... Again, did I say we're in the fan... Obviously, we're in the fan Q&A, where we answer Dolphins fans' questions. I have to say, it's a habit. But anyway, back to Beef's question. He said, shouldn't we let other teams just beat the crap out of us? Okay, let me restart this question. He says, hey, Skaggs, this will be a rant and a question. Even though the season is pretty much over for the Dolphins, it doesn't mean that they shouldn't let other teams just beat the crap out of us. I say that because we got the Buffalo Bills this Halloween, and they are one of the reasons why we imploded. Buffalo is most likely going to want to repeat the same whooping they gave us in week 2, if not injured Tua again. I don't care how bad the season has gotten. This team should not go out there with a bad attitude just because the season is over. The Dolphins are most likely not expected to win, but they shouldn't let the Bills shut us out again, at least make it a tight game. I think this game is very important in terms of pride and respect this team might have right now, not just players, but the coaching staff. They really need to wake up and play with dignity, because I know the Bills are going to love humiliating the Dolphins. If you had to send a message to the Dolphins going into Buffalo, what would you say to them? In my opinion, I don't think Dolphins or Brian Flores plans to lose any more respect. Just let us give the Buffalo Bills a real good fight this Sunday. I love that, Beef. I really do. I think if I had to give him one message, I would say you guys haven't played your best football yet this year. You've underachieved all year. There is still a good football team in there. And we just have to find it and find whatever we need to do to kind of bring it together. We've had games where the defense has played well and the offense hasn't. We've had games where the offense has played well and the defense hasn't. We just need to kind of find a rhythm for both sides of the ball and close out a game and win one. And I think the worst losses this year have been against the bad teams like Jacksonville and Atlanta. In Indianapolis, who was really hurt in that game, and we still lost. So, and granted, we've had to deal with a lot of injuries this year as well. But we still should have won those games. I think that's probably the most frustrating thing about this year is that, and I love what you said, like, keep fighting, I think is what I would say. And, there is still a lot of talent on this team. And hopefully they can figure it out. Maybe we can have a better second half of the year than we did the first half of the year. Whatever that means. We just win more games, or maybe go on a little bit of a run. Whatever that means, kind of have a little bit of a happier ending here. So let's go to the next question. This next question comes from TR3MC. He says, "Hey Skaggs, one more question. Is it possible to measure quarterback success with such an underwhelming offensive line? With the new offensive coordinator and coaching changes every year, I don't think we would win with any of the top quarterbacks right now on this team. Your thoughts?" I agree. I think this team's issues, and it's clear as day, is not the quarterback. 7 touchdowns in 3 games, guys, okay? And we're talking about a top 5 quarterback when it comes to completion percentage. The man had an 80% completion percentage against Atlanta. Yes, he had those turnovers, but who had the lead at the end of the game? We did. So at the end of the day, it's more than the quarterback, and I think we all know that. I think the offensive line is way better than it was at the start of the year. I think that's clear. Austin Jackson continues to be an issue. He's the worst player on this offensive line. He had a lot of... the pick was literally because of Austin Jackson. The 4th and 1 against Jacksonville was because of Austin Jackson. He blew his block against Josh Allen, and that's the reason we got stopped on 4th and 1. This week, the pick to Olakun, he got beat pretty fast against Grady Jarrett. He had a bad holding call in this game. Austin Jackson has to play better, but I forgot to even rant about him. He's not played good at all this year. But what was I saying? Clearly, again, this team has a lot of issues more than just Tua, and I think we can all see that. Whether it's off the field or on the field, this team has a lot of problems right now, and they need to fix it. And hopefully they can fix it, and I hope they get their mojo back soon. I hope Brian Flores, who was a great coach his first 2 years, can get his mojo back as well, and hopefully we'll see that. But yeah, to answer your question, to go back to TR3's question, he says, basically what he's saying, yes, I think it's not Tua's fault, and it's not, the quarterback isn't going to fix everything, and I do agree with that. This next question comes from KC Fanatic. He says, Tua's interceptions are to be expected as a part of the development of a young NFL quarterback. Again, this comes from KC Fanatic. He says, I believe he is our future, and we should forget Watson. Your thoughts? Yes, I agree with that. I think that Tua has shown enough development so far this year. And when people like Chris Sims criticize him, it has nothing. He knows how to play the game. He's a great quarterback, but it's his arm strength that's the issue. It's not his arm strength that is the issue. And again, people say this because we don't go down the field. Tua, and if you look up the All-22, Tua has basically not missed anything down the field or any reads down the field except one time, and that was against Jacksonville. A great example of that is against New England when he threw that beautiful deep pass to Albert Wilson. That was a great play by Jalen Mills. We have no run game. And if you look at all the great teams that go down the field, most of those down the field plays are off play action. So when you don't run the ball very well, it's hard to get the defenses to bite. Every team we've played has played heavy zone coverage and is just willing to let us sit there and check it down. And I honestly do believe it's because they think, if we make the Dolphins go on these long play drives, we're going to get not a tip, but something bad is going to happen up front because of our offensive line. If we let them pass 50 times, let's say 40 times in a game like we did against Atlanta, out of those 40 times, how many times are we going to be able to get to the quarterback? And I think teams think a lot. And if we just protect the deep play and the big play, and we don't give up a big play, we don't even have to blitz the Dolphins because we can get pretty good pressure with a 3-man rush, and that's happened this year, or a 4-man rush. So I think that's why you don't see the big plays. It has nothing to do with Tua. It's just the shortcomings of this offense, to be honest with you, that leads to no big plays. It has nothing to do with the quarterback, and has everything to do with everything else that's going on. Like I said, with the no run game and the offensive line. So that is why we can't get deep passes down the field. Has nothing to do with the quarterback. This next question comes from Jerry. He says, "Don't you think it's ridiculous that what they're putting Tua through? I'm genuinely ashamed." Again, this next question comes from Jerry. He says, "Don't you think it's ridiculous what they're putting Tua through? I'm genuinely ashamed to be a Dolphins fan at this point. I have to pick between this regime and Tua. I pick Tua." Yeah, I do think it is ridiculous what they're putting him through. It doesn't make a lot of sense. I'm curious to get past this week to see how all the dominoes fall. I think Tua will be the quarterback, and I think that says a lot for. And I hope, and honestly, not even just. I hope Tua. I'm excited to watch the rest of his year. I'm mostly excited for him to shut up a lot of people who are in the media. I think that's what I'm excited about for him. And if this offensive line can continue to get better, I wish we could figure out a way to make Austin Jackson play better. I really do, but yeah, I think to answer your question, it's not been great. With the Chris Greer has been pretty much non-existent this year. In terms, I wish we could talk to Chris Greer right now and just lay it into him. And Stephen Ross, obviously, with him not answering questions at the owners' meeting, for whatever reason, he didn't. Some people think, oh, the tampering rule, that's why he didn't do it. Maybe he just did it because he didn't want to answer these stupid questions. And again, like I said, the media has to be accountable for a lot of this because clearly if, let's say, Deshaun Watson isn't traded, and I'm sure they'll come up with some excuse why it wasn't done. But they literally, multiple times this past week, have said that the trade is done. Mike Florio said today that he expects it still to be done by Tuesday. So again, there's no accountability with these reporters. They can say whatever the heck they want, act like they have sources. Maybe Stephen Ross, and again, there was another report earlier this week that contradicted the report that Stephen Ross was pushing for it within the organization. There was a report from this was from the Miami side, that he isn't pushing the organization towards that. So it's like, who is telling the truth? Who isn't? It doesn't make a lot of sense. Clearly someone is lying. And I tend to believe it's the reporting. I think that's what's been the worst part. And again, and every time we hear about the Deshaun Watson rumors comes to Miami, they talk about how bad Tua is. Like it's like all Tua has to do is go out there and play well, and he has. That's the crazy part. He has played really good football through these first few games of the year, and for some reason, these rumors still go on. But again, I think a lot of it has to do with the poor reporting that has happened. Anyway, this next question comes from Jerry. He says, "Skaggs, at this point I'm done panicking and have to accept the terms of the fate. For the year now, all I want to see is defensive improvement and for Tua to continue balling out. The Watson talk scare me. Do you think Watson would be a bad idea? I'm starting to think Tua is the man." Yeah, I agree with that. I think Tua is the guy to go with for the foreseeable future. I'm glad there's a lot of Tua support in the comments. This next question comes from Mythical Space Child. He says, "Hey Skaggs, where do I begin? Unfortunately, this team..." God, every time I read his name. Mythical Space Child. Again, this question comes from Mythical Space Child. He says, "Where do I even begin? Unfortunately, this team is in a situation where it's still going to take a few years before we have any hope." I definitely disagree with that. That is a very skeptical outlook on things. I think, again, this team just won 10 games. There's a talented team in there. I just think between the off-the-field stuff, and I think that had a lot to do with a lot of the issues on this team, and just there's a lot of issues with this team right now. But I do think this team still has a bright future. And he goes on to say, "So let me ask you this. Right now, do you see any difference between 2+ years with Flores compared to the 3 years with Adam Gase?" The differences, I would say respect around the league has been very different. I mean, when you think about what other people have said about this regime, and from reporters and people who've come through here through the building, they said it's been the best since Jimmy Johnson. So I think that's definitely the biggest difference. for sure, of the two regimes, for sure, is respect that Brian does have around the league. And he goes on to say, we're literally where we were 3 years ago, and it sucks. I've been a fan of this team since I was 4. I'm 33 now, and it's really sad for some younger people who have only seen the team make the playoffs twice since 2004. That's 2 times in almost 18 years, and that's pathetic, and it starts at the top. Yeah, I mean, it's been tough, dude. It's been really, really tough. We haven't won a playoff game since, I think, it was 2002 against the Colts. Stephen Ross doesn't know anything about football. He bought this team as an investment, and all he wants to do is host Super Bowls and other major attractions. I disagree with that. I really do. I do think Stephen Ross wants to win. He's been willing to spend as much money as he possibly can. I think this whole thing about his control over this organization has been overblown. And I've mentioned this a million times, and I'm sick and tired of mentioning it. If it was Stephen Ross who was controlling the football decisions, we would have Lamar Jackson right now. We would have so many different players right now that we heard from in the past. If he didn't control the Adam Gase regime, he's not controlling this regime, guys. He's just not. He bought, and I agree. I think he bought this team to have a great franchise and to win. Mystical Space Shuttle goes on to say he's making money, doesn't care about how the team does. Greer did a great job acquiring a ton of picks over the last couple of years. However, they don't mean anything when you don't draft the correct players. Flores has lost the locker room. It started last year when he benched Fitzpatrick, and the rumors came out how the players weren't on board. Then he disrespected Fitzpatrick because after benching him, he would bring him in like a closer in baseball and to bail out the team to win the game, only for there to be no doubt that he was still the backup quarterback going forward. When it was clear Tua wasn't ready, then after throwing Tua out there when he wasn't ready with no training camp or preseason, then you fill the kid's head with all the Watson talk that's still going on till this day. Meanwhile, Brian Flores will go down as the man Urban Meyer out-coached to win his first NFL game, not to mention after the Colts game when the offense was a dud, and they asked Flo, let's be honest, change your quarterbacks because Brissett sucked. And Reed Sinnett, who actually looked better than Brissett in preseason with the worst offensive line receivers, was on the bench. Flo said, quote, Sinnett wasn't an option. Okay. Mystical Space Shot goes on to say just everything else that we've done, like the Justin Herbert thing, the broken hip. He says, thanks for your time, Skaggs. I'm sorry, dude, we're running out of time. He says, love the show, brother. I agree with some of the things you're saying. I think what people have to understand with Dolphins fans is we have had such no success basically in 20 years that stuff like this kind of boils over because we're sick and tired of it. And we've seen the same old song over and over again. That's what Mystical Space Child is saying. And thank you for saying you like the show and everything like that. I appreciate that. But that's basically what Mystical Space Child is saying. It's like he's sick of the same song and dance basically over and over again. And I agree with that. It's an unfortunate start to this year and an unfortunate wasted season that should have been a lot better than it was. And we'll see what happens. With Tua the rest of the year, I think that's what people have to look forward to. And yeah, we'll see. We'll see how things shake out for the rest of the year, and then we'll get a full breakdown and really kind of sit back and look at what really went on this year. Because as of right now, the season isn't over. I'm excited to see what Tua does for the rest of the year, and I guess we'll leave it at that and see where Brian save his job is the main question. Because I think after this year, if things don't get better and they continue to get worse, and let's say Tua still plays really good football, I wouldn't be surprised if Stephen Ross goes after someone like Eric Bieniemy and tries to get him in here, an offensive guy who can help develop Tua even more. This next question comes from Beef. He says, hey, Skaggs, where do you find your thumbnails for the podcast? The reason I say this is because hearing you rant about how you can only find one from the UK game and how disgusting it looked made my day. By the way, I thought the thumbnail was appropriate to show how dismal the season has gone. Thank you, Beef. Yeah, it was a gross thumbnail. It really, really was. I don't know, dude. I just try to find any pictures I can from anywhere. That's how I do it, and that's the only one I could find. This next question comes from Bad Bandit. He says, hey, Skaggs, how do you feel about the season? I can't think of a worse time to be a Dolphins fan. I'm so conflicted. Do we let Tua learn? Do we trade for Watson? Is Watson a criminal? Is the trade a last-ditch effort by this front office to save their jobs? Why can't we get any draft picks right? Why do players we give contracts to stop playing hard? X and Baker, 1-6 without our pick. Are we cursed? We might be cursed. We've had bad luck in these games too. A lot of things just haven't bounced our way, whether it's field goal kicking or anything you can really think of. There's been a lot of bad bounces this year, but what is the question? I mean, there was a lot of issues there that came from Bad Bandit. Yeah, I mean, it's tough, man. I really don't know how to answer that question. I guess we should answer this one because that's different from all the other questions that people answered. Is the Watson thing an attempt to save jobs? I hope not. I hope it's not an attempt to save jobs because I hope it's a rational decision if it is a decision. It might be. If it does happen, I think that's probably the best. I think that's probably the only logical reason to do it, I guess. Some like weird last-ditch effort to prolong your stay here, I guess. This next question comes from Mark. He says, "You have an interesting I have an interesting question. LOL. Do you think the reason we lost this game was because of drafting? Should we have stayed at 3 to draft Pitts or Chase? Second question, or third LOL. Is Zach Taylor a better coach than Brian Flores, or does Taylor have the better quarterback and receiver combo?" I don't know really. I mean, I think Brian is definitely a better leader. I don't want to get into that, but I think your other question was interesting. This is another thing that I saw over the week. It's like, the Dolphins should have drafted Kyle Pitts. Jalen Waddle has played well. Kyle Pitts doesn't change the 1-6 record, guys. And Jalen Waddle has a very bright future in the NFL. So I don't understand that at all. This next question comes from SM. He says, "Makes me sick to know we passed on Matt Ryan and Kyle Pitts." Now, Matt Ryan's a different conversation, but Kyle Pitts doesn't really fix anything. This next question comes from Nothing Face. He says, "Do you think it would be worth it to make a trade for Ronald Jones?" No, I don't. This next question comes from Maurice. He says, "Hey, Skaggs, what are your thoughts of the play calling in the fourth quarter?" My thought is we moved the ball much better than even in the Raiders game. I do agree with that. I thought the offensive play calling was really good. I thought the game plan on both sides of the ball was really good. This next question comes from Brandon. He says, said a gut-wrenching loss, right, but Tua forced a lot of throws that I feel will lead to his growth. How do you feel about how he played despite the 2 interceptions?" I thought he played really well. I think the thing that I loved about him the most, and something that we have seen from a lot of quarterbacks that have come around here lately, is his fight. And despite, getting down 2 possessions in this game, he fought all the way back to take the lead back. And I thought he carried the team a lot in this game and made a lot. I mean, between he broke Deion Jones' tackles, his movement in the pocket to keep plays alive, his quick decision-making, his ability to diagnose what defense they were running for pretty much the entire game and was shredding. The only reason we had the lead in the fourth quarter was because of Tua. So that is it, guys. I'm sorry we didn't get to every question. I feel like I ranted a lot in this game. I hope that I made some of my points as clear as I possibly could. But, hopefully things continue to get better. And it's hard to say that. I'm excited to see what Tuesday's like. Let's just put it that way. I'm excited to see how Tua plays against the Bills. I think the offense is going in the right direction. I think the defense is going in the wrong direction. I think the game plan for defense has been pretty good. The players have been able to execute, and we're not getting enough from a lot of different guys. Like our edge pressure has to be better. Our linebackers have to play better. They've been super underwhelming this year between Jerome Baker, and even players like Sam McGuavin, who I thought would have played better by now. But anyway, yeah, that's it, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one.